VÉRITÉ. Welcome to the Music You're Missing studio. How are you?
I'm great.
Same. We just had a wonderful conversation. It felt like we were in podcast mode for like the past 10 minutes.
It's okay. We're going to literally regurgitate the conversation.
Yeah, we'll rehash it. It was nice, though. It's like nice to not go into it with like not having spoken to someone. You just kind of have to start from scratch. I feel like I've learned a lot about you in the past 7 minutes.
Yeah, I think that it's a better way to start a podcast for sure.
The pre-podcast podcast. Anyways, welcome to Boston. I'm sorry your Uber routed you in a weird way. Have you been to this side of Boston before?
Can I be honest? I don't know where the fuck I am.
Yeah,
like I don't. I think that touring gives you such a weird perspective of cities.
Yeah.
Because I know the area right around Brighton Music Hall.
Mm-hmm.
I know the area right around the House of Blues. These venues that like I've kind of hit multiple times, and then other than that, like I could be in any structure in any city right now. I have no idea.
Yeah, well, that's funny because you are definitely in like a very modern part of Boston where the things that make Boston Boston are not necessarily here. So you're getting the corporate Boston.
Great, I love it. I want to see every side of Boston.
But yeah, so I saw you in Boston before actually when you opened up for Fletcher at the House of Blues.
Oh, amazing! That's where I am again tonight.
That's one of my favorite venues, and that's Fenway Park. So that's like a very Boston experience.
Yeah, and there's not a game tonight, which everyone is highly grateful for.
I totally forgot about that. I remember, well, the line for the Fletcher show was the longest line I've ever seen in my life for a concert.
Yeah, Fletcher has really, really devoted and amazing fans. It was really amazing getting to open for her.
Yeah.
And just getting invited into that world. I think for me, when I open for people, I view it as this challenge of how do I invite people and give them exposure to me and my world in a way that makes them want to come back for more. And I definitely have a lot of Fletcher fans who have become very, very avid VÉRITÉ fans.
Well, I've seen the tweets. They tweet with a very certain type of language. And I'm like, I bet you that was a Fletcher convert.
Yeah, I feel very grateful when opening pairings are well matched.
Yeah.
And I'm able to kind of, I don't know, meet new people and kind of grow in that way.
Yeah, no, I remember that there was a lot of purple light on your set, and it was really cool. It was like, I was an instant fan.
I try and keep shit moody.
I like that. But I've been watching your journey ever since, and it's actually really cool because I saw that you just played your first ever arena in Montreal a few days ago.
I did. That was wild.
Yeah, I heard you say in a podcast that like when you play things like the Today Show, it's so like instantaneous and quick, and then it's just kind of like over, so you don't really get to like experience it all too much. But for an arena, like you're there all day, you got load in, and then you have a full ass set in an arena. So like, how was that experience?
It was really interesting. So everyone's audience is different. So the Fletcher audience is way different from the LP audience. Mm-hmm. They're both brilliant, but like just different subsets of human and like energy and vibe. And so LP's audience skews maybe a little older.
Okay.
And they're very, very quiet and attentive. Mm-hmm. So I literally said this from stage. I never expected the first time I played an arena to be to a literally silent, seated, attentive audience just watching. Yeah. And for some people that would feel like a negative. For me, it's a net positive. It's how grateful I get to be for, 4,500 people to be quiet and be watching what you're presenting to them. Yeah. Like, it's truly why I make music. And we've been doing a lot of seated theaters on this run.
Oh, that's cool.
So the arena being seated was wild, but all of these seated theaters, you actually put on a different type of performance. Yeah. Right? You actually have to be the artist and, like, the performer. It's way less of this exchange, and it's much more of, like, okay, I'm going to give you a piece of myself.
That's a really interesting concept, and it makes so much sense. Do you have a preference? Like, would you prefer a more like rowdy on stage, or do you actually like the intimate feeling?
I really love both. Yeah. I think it's just a matter of within that first song understanding what I'm working with. Yeah, yeah. Right, because you do get on stage and you're like, I don't know what the fuck this is gonna be. This could be great. Everything could sound different than it did in sound check with bodies in a room. So the first song is always sussing everything out. Mm-hmm. And so I can kind of gauge where I'm at and what kind of energy I need to bring in order to make it a great show. And I don't really have a preference. Like Chicago on this run was one of the biggest shows, sold out at the Salt Shed, and an amazing, amazing crowd. And they were like really lively and really rowdy and kind of with me, and then quiet at the moments I wanted them to be. So for me, it's really how you work an audience is how do you get them to pay attention in the moments where you want them to pay attention, and then let loose in the moments you want them to let loose.
I feel like that's a really great skill set that is super important for a touring artist that might not necessarily go like tapped into for a lot of artists as well.
Yeah, it's something that it's not a perfect science. Like there is a level of that is wholly out of your control. But someone gave me the nicest compliment the other day. I think it was like someone who worked at a venue. They were like, wow, this is really your show for 40 minutes. Like, you don't feel like an opener. And I think I take that to heart. It's like, if I'm on stage, this is my fucking stage. This is my show. Even though I'm a guest of this artist, the idea that, like, for 40 minutes, I am inhabiting that stage and this is my crowd and my world is really sacred to me and important. And I try and own it as much as I can.
Yeah. I talked about this a little bit in my intro. You're like a full-blown independent artist and all of the things that means. Like, you really have your toes in so much, and I can tell how much, like, the craft means to you, all aspects of your artistry. So that's really cool to hear.
Thanks. Yeah, independence initially wasn't by choice and then became by choice pretty early in my career. And it's definitely, like, I wouldn't have it any other way. There are challenges, but I think the upside of winning when you're independent can't be beat. So what's interesting is I was never signed.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've been independent fully from the get.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really interesting because I think we are now in this phase of a lot of major label artists getting out of their deals and transitioning to independence. And it's been really interesting for me talking to friends and other artists who are in that transition and trying to equip them with some of the knowledge and skills and like red flags to look out for, etc., of how to run an independent project, because it's actually really apples and oranges.
Yeah.
The level of involvement, the level of work, the level of intricacy, understanding your finances, having to develop additional skill sets to compensate for, lack of a major label budget, etc. So I think for me, it's like, I feel very grateful that I'm like about 10 years into this career that I've built something that it has a foundation that can be sustainable independently. And then you're always just like kind of waiting for your next win that will kind of take you the next 5 years.
Yeah. What was your latest win, the arena show, or just like this overall tour?
I think this tour is definitely a win. I released a record earlier this year and I toured it, and I think that I'm feeling like a lot of people are feeling these barriers to progress within the music industry. This is such a big and loaded subject, the idea of what is an artist in 2023.
Yeah.
Right? What does it mean to be an artist? What are the requirements for being an artist? And not only being an artist, being a successful artist that can sustain a career. And I think for me, there's a lot of friction points of artists wanting to monetize their art, not knowing how, feeling exploited by the music industry, which the music industry is wholly exploitative, but not recognizing that it's also now our jobs to navigate the market and the culture that exists currently, where people aren't willing to pay for music. People don't have the attention span to really be deeply involved with 50 artists.
Yeah.
Right? Attention is scarce. And so I think for me, it's about recognizing the realities of the market, and as an artist viewing that as a creative challenge to how can I expand my concept of what is art and what is my artistry to these different considerations, whether it be content creation, whether it be how do I connect with people, whether it be the music that I'm creating, etc., so that I can build something that is financially sustainable, so that ultimately I can continue doing whatever the fuck I want to do, right? And like that, and it is a precarious balance.
Yeah.
And like, it is hard. It is not easy to balance all of these things. And I also recognize that I have a very unique brain that can hold all of these realities together, and pivot really quickly between them. But I think it's a really interesting, loaded question of like, yeah, now you have to be a content creator and you have to have a fucking camera in your face, and like, no one gives a fuck about my day to day. Like, I don't give a fuck about my day to day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to wake up and tell you what I'm eating.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's rice cakes. I eat rice cakes and almond butter every morning. like it's not interesting.
Yeah. And that's also like not why we're in it. And to be honest, like yesterday I was doing a deep dive, obviously, just to like prepare for this. And I had a thought, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I was looking through all of your stuff, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, like everything with your name on it. And I was like, I feel like you have a style. You don't have a brand. Like, I don't feel like you're trying to sell me something. I don't feel like you're trying to get me to do anything other than listen to your music. Like, you're not selling me on a product. Like, you just want me to know you for being an artist and like the art that you create. And I actually really do appreciate that. Those are the artists that I resonate with the most.
Thanks. That means a lot. I think what I'm really trying to do is, as a quote unquote content creator, I'm really trying to avoid the desperate, please listen to my music. I need you to listen to my music because I need to pay my rent vibe. Mm-hmm. Right? If I need to fucking pay my rent, I'm going to go wait tables. Yeah. Right? Like, and I think that for me, I'm really happy that the style comes across because I really try very hard to just be exactly myself, which is sometimes really quiet, which is sometimes highly curated and artistic, which is sometimes like really crass and silly, and all of these things. And I want the visual story to exist, and I don't want to taint that with things that I look back on and I cringe at. Yeah. Like, oh my God, I can't believe. And I have to say, there's like a quality to things that I have posted that feel put on and things that feel natural. And I think that, honestly, I've deleted all the things that felt put on because I'm just like, I actually don't want that shit living out in the open and on the internet.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of mentioned, too, the visuals that you had. And Love You Forever, just the whole project, I feel like had really, really cool visual elements, whether it was like the videos or just like the still photos that you shared. Is that something that you knew before you had the concept for the album, while you were creating the album, or after the fact?
As I was creating the record, I don't start off being like, I'm making a concept record about X. I'm really just like collecting ideas, collecting melodies, collecting songs, maybe starting to build out some productions of things that resonate and that I like. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a puzzle kind of scattered on a table. And then there's usually like a point in the creative process, and it could be months into it, could be, it's really not a perfect science, where the picture starts to form. It's not put together, but I start to kind of understand the world or really understand what I'm trying to say as I'm trying to write it. And I think None of You, the third track on the record, was that moment, which is why it was so important that it was on the record, even though it like definitely wasn't a single. And I just saw the table of that visualizer, this like mid-century dude tied up, me kind of like dancing around him, and it was the catalyst for the visual world. Wow. And then I started applying that concept to the songs that had already been written, and I was just like, that checks. It all fits. Makes sense, yeah. And then it allowed me to be informed as I finished the record. So you have songs like a lucid dream, which the epilogue had been written, but I kind of interpolated the epilogue into like the full song.
Oh, wow.
And essentially that song was the last thing written, and it was written for the world.
Yeah. Are you ever like questioning? Because I mean, there's some bloodiness in there.
Yeah.
Are you ever like, is this too much, or like?
I don't think
It doesn't come across that way at all. I was just curious.
It's for sure not enough. Let's be real. I think that if I had more money,
It'd be like a full blown Saw 5.
not Saw 5. I think that like the gore is unnecessary. That being said, I think that I was really strategic in how I created the visuals.
Yeah.
I ultimately don't know if they were effective for how people consume content these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, I viewed it as a graphic novel in a way where if you watch all of the visualizers and listen to the record, you're going to get the full story. And it became a very practical way to get a lot of different scenes and a lot of different visuals to represent the arc of the story and the arc of the record. And I'm really, I mean, this is my favorite batch of visuals to date. Like, I'm so absolutely proud of them. And the blood was just fun. And me dragging that body for I Would Leave You was also, like, so fun.
Was it like a one-take drag?
No, because, okay, so Kevin was in the bag. Like, we put a person wrapped up in
Poor
the sheet.
Kevin.
No, Kevin knew. The whole time, I literally was just like, hey, Kevin, do you want to do this? And Kevin's so great. He's a string player from New York. He had like been in a Dua Lipa music video, so he knows
Sick.
what's good. And the whole time I was like, hey, you're going to be tied up with a bag on your head, dragged, and at some point, like, I need to, like, straddle you. I'm like, is that cool? Like, you feel good? He's like, yeah, I'm down.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I felt very grateful. And what's funny is my partner and my cousin, Matt, who plays guitar, also co-produces with me, the amount of people who are just like, are you Baghead? And he's like, no, I'm not fucking Baghead. No.
It's Kevin.
It's not me.
That's so funny. Well, Love You Forever. It's actually not coming to a close, but we're almost at the end of an era. I know your latest single, Paranoia Deja Vu, marks the final chapter of Love You Forever. First of all, wow. Like, honestly, one of my favorite tracks of yours.
Thank you.
Like, everything about it is just, like, the lyric video. I could watch that. Like, I just am reading every single word, and then I'll watch it again, and I feel like I missed something the first time. Amazing. Before I get into the track even more, and fanboy, what does the next chapter kind of look like?
Okay. So this is the terrifying part. You ready? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I actually don't know. And there's part of me that finds that to be exciting. I think that part of the reason this tour I'm currently on is such a win is because I for sure wasn't ready to just be home through the end of the year with this looming pressure to create.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to happen. I think it would have like destroyed me. And so I think that I don't know what the next era looks like, the next world looks like. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop. Like, I have the Love You Forever era in terms of new music is dead, right? I'm not, like, that, the narrative feels very complete. The relationship, I mean, maybe relationships that I kind of wrote the record around are, like, have come full circle to a place of like closure, even in my life, right? So all of that, the door is kind of closed. Paranoia Deja Vu is that last chapter. So I have some ideas of remixes or live versions that I want to kind of pollinate out into the world. And then next, like, I have a single that I'm excited about that I'll finish in December. I obviously have the podcast. And then it's going to be kind of an era of experimentation.
That's exciting.
Right? Not dissimilar from when I first released By Now and He's Not You after New Skin. Of like, cool, we're just going to make some music, test out some sounds, see how they feel. And then slowly but surely, I believe another record will come to fruition.
Yeah. Wait, so many things that I want to comment on. The podcast, the remixes. I want to bring it back to Paranoia Deja Vu, though. Specifically, the lyrics of the chorus. You call it Paranoia, but I call it Deja Vu. I think that's such like a beautiful line. Like, do you remember creating that and like the feeling you got when you had it?
So that song started with the bridge.
Oh.
And it was the first session I had done in a long time. I don't really do writings. I don't really write with people anymore.
Oh, wow.
Me and my cousin Matt really like are co-producing everything. I wind up writing most of everything alone. There are some things on Love You Forever that kind of came from when I was doing maybe a session or two. But it was my first session in like a year. It had been a while, and it was with my good friend Tomi, who has an amazing project, and Mia Follick, who also is an amazing artist. And we kind of sat down, and when you're like writing with other artists, right, there is always a concept of like, who's in charge?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and not in a dominance kind of way, but who are we writing for? Because we all know that writing is like this sacred process.
Yeah.
And if someone is too domineering, it's like, oh, that song's no longer for me. So it became clear that like we're writing for me, like within that. And I just started singing and playing what is the bridge. And I thought it was the chorus for a minute, but it's like, here's the part where I tried to convince myself how you'll become someone else if I give it time. And I got really angry with myself because I thought I was like done writing about this fucking relationship that like fell apart and like was the catalyst for all of this grief that made Love You Forever. That like triggered what was like a lifetime of grief, not just the grief of the end of a relationship. And, you know, you could call it paranoia, but I call it deja vu. It's like when someone kind of gaslights you into being like, you're paranoid, or like, this isn't real. And you're like, bitch, I've been here before. Like, I know exactly how this feels. I know exactly what you're going to say. I know exactly how this is going to play out. And I think that frustration, and it felt like kind of the final verbalization of kind of everything I had felt in that situation, in the most candid and vulnerable and direct way. And I think as I age, I'm just getting more literal and more, if I can even get more direct, I am becoming more direct.
Well, I saw so many people have not only resonated with it, but they actually like said that it was really healing for them. How does that feel to create something that not only people like sing and not only do they really like it, but they also take that and they like learn and grow from it?
I think that for me, it's the reason why I do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've been on this concept recently. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where when you merge art with business and the desire to make money from the art, you're changing its DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And it is now what I believe a service to people. And I think that this idea that I am so myself that for all of that, its ups and downs and like rough edges, and that I'm totally fine just giving myself and other people a space to be themselves and to be messy and to be crass and to be angry and to feel the full chaos of what it is to like be alive. I view that as my service, and I feel very grateful that people resonate. I feel very grateful that people even give it the time of day.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, it's like the whole reason I do this shit.
No, I love hearing that. I mean, that was definitely like for me. I mean, luckily, I guess I can't necessarily relate to it, but it sure has enhanced like my showers. Like I was listening to that in the shower and I was putting on a full show while I was shampooing. But yeah, no, I was like looking, I was like, oh man, I do feel bad that so many people relate to that, but it is such a trope that's so true. Like the whole gaslighting of it, unfortunately, like so many people fucking gaslight.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's intentional. I mean, like, the beauty is my ex, who, you know.
That says it all.
I played it for him because we co-produced all of my records before. So New Skin, him and I worked on together. Somewhere in between, we worked on together. And so with the loss of, like, that relationship, and I won't, like, go into, like, the details, but it was also like the loss of a creative collaborator.
Yeah.
And so now that we've kind of come to this place of closure and the ability to like genuinely be friends, and like he feels like family to me, even though there's obviously this like distance between us, I think that I feel great when he's like, wow, this is really well written and the production fucking slaps. And I'm like, let's go.
You know what I got out of this conversation? You're like so mature and smart. And I think I get to take some life advice from you, which is actually great because you're gearing up. Look at that segue. You're gearing up for the second season of your podcast, Anatomy of an Artist.
Yes.
Which honestly, like I was telling you before, I literally clicked on the Olivia O'Brien episode, and in like 2 minutes you had her talking about something I've never heard an artist like just so candidly talk about, and it was that she lost money on a tour. And then obviously I was listening to so many other episodes, and you've had really impressive guests. I'm kind of curious, like being an artist in itself is a full-time job plus.
Yeah.
So what made you want to start a podcast?
I started it in COVID, and I started it when I really started looking at the landscape of the music industry and being like, understanding that certain roadblocks and challenges within the industry were starting to crop up for people like me who are independent, who aren't in the system, who aren't playing the major label game. And I think so it was a twofold of, it was a desire to have transparent conversations with artists about what it's like to balance being an artist, creating your art, and building a sustainable business from that art. And not just artists, but I've had like producers. I've had so many angles and perspectives because I really believe that no one talks about this shit, and then everyone is fucking each other over constantly and doesn't understand the other person's business. And the music industry and everyone playing in it is at a disadvantage, and it is to their detriment, that lack of understanding. And so for me, facilitating those conversations at the same time as creating a new outlet for myself, and viewing that as opening myself up to these, different potential revenue streams, different trajectories that my career can go into.
Yeah.
Thinking about like, what do I want to be doing when I'm 60?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also helps that you're really good at it.
Thank you.
So what's in store for the next season?
Oh, I have really great guests lined up so far, but I think that it is a hybrid. So I think it's obviously speaking to more artists, but I'm going to bring in more people from my team.
Oh, cool.
In my world. So, for instance, Matt and I will do an episode kind of talking about our creative relationship, how we balance being, family, creative collaborators, how we started, because Matt and I have been playing music together since we were children.
Wow.
I'll have my manager on, and we'll talk about how we've built this project independently, as well as, a lot of other artists, some producers. So it'll be a bit of a hybrid, but I think it's been really fun lifting the hood on other people's projects, and the idea that I can lift the hood on my own project.
Yeah.
Like I did an episode with a really good friend of mine who's a producer, and he got so excited. He's like, "Can I interview you?" And so the next day he interviewed me. So there's an episode where he just like flips the script. It'll be a double where then he starts asking me all of these questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's such a cool way to let people in without being in your car and being like, I have the song of the summer. Like, that is a very authentic way.
I don't have the song of the summer ever.
Honestly, like the song of like sad winter.
Yeah, I have the song of winter.
Well, Verité, it has been a pleasure having you in our Fish Tank studio. I like to wrap up every interview with this question. Beyond music and beyond your career, what are some goals you have for the near future?
For the near future?
Yeah.
Okay, get this. I'm going to finish this tour, and I really want two things. I'm going home. It'll be December in New York. Imagine it.
Lovely.
Cold, right? We're starting to hibernate a little bit. I moved my studio into this smaller room. It was in the bigger room, and it felt too open, so I moved it into the smaller room. I want to decorate that room so that I have this like really nice contained working space within my apartment. And then I want to buy like a measuring cup and some bowls, and my kitchen is like the kitchen of a frat bro. Like, I have one rusted IKEA pan. And so I want to buy some cooking supplies, and I want to start cooking more and maybe baking all of the healthy shit that I want to consume. And I feel like December feels like the perfect time to do both of those things. For sure.
I love that. I call that living life less intensely, because I feel like sometimes like I travel a lot or I'm working a lot, and like sometimes it really is the small things like making dinner where you're like, oh my God, this is life. I
would love to be in like a beautiful routine where like I wake up, I exercise, I sit down in a beautiful space, I edit some podcasts, I work on some creative work, I like work on mixing some live sessions, like we do all of this. And then, like, I get up, I go to the grocery store, and I fucking make a really great meal.
Yep.
That sounds like a beautiful December.
As my yoga teacher would say, there's beauty in the still.
Let's see if it happens.